All right, let's do this, people. Dude, Huberman time. All right. CrowdStrike will be liable for damages in France based on OVH precedent. Okay. Today, I'm doing a quick post to cover the recent CrowdStrike incident that is estimated to have disabled 8.5 million computers and caused more than 5.4 billion in damages since last week. Now, the crazy part is when you search up things like CrowdStrike stock, one of the very first things to pop up is we saw it earlier. There you go. CrowdStrike is likely shielded from billions in customer losses. So people are still not sure, it seems like, whether or not this is going to be held liable. But I do think that there is something kind of wild that a company could disable this many computers. Now, remember, for those that have forgotten, when it disabled all those computers, not only did it disable them, but it had to be manually restarted, at least a good percentage of them. And so some lion's share of 8.5 million computers were restarted manually. Now remember, if it takes 1 second to restart it, to remove CrowdStrike, and to be done, it would take approximately, 92 days, 93 days to restart all 8.5 million computers if you could restart and change a computer once per second. So it'd take a third of the year to do that. So think about how many people for the last week have just been starting up and stopping it over and over and over again. Yeah, there was also this one. Someone was saying that just turn it on and off again 15 times. Apparently, that was also a cure from the CrowdStrike, is turning it on and off again 15 times, which just seems weird. Seems weird, right? Just turn the power stations on and off and off and on and off and off again. Why 15 times? A classic. Turn it on and off. It's like Elden Ring. If you hit the right wall 15 times, it'll eventually crush, right? Now, a common question is whether CrowdStrike will be liable for the damages. The answer is most certainly yes. I at least know one person that's disagreeing with you right here. So this is the disagreeing article right here. Opinion, why CrowdStrike is likely, more why is likely shielded from billions in customer losses. The outage is believed to have caused 5.4 billion in losses. Okay, so they agree on the number, but they're actually saying that it might not actually be as simple as we're making it here. But it sounds like we're at least liable in France. There was actually a very similar case that was brought to court a few years ago, right, regarding the OVH incident. Does anyone know what that is? Can somebody read this to me? I need somebody to read this to me. La Cindy du Centre de Donnes. De OVH Cloud de Strasbourg. I can't read that. They had a fire. Data center burned down. Oh, a data center burned down. Baguette. Ooh, oui, oui, baguette. Okay, OVH had a fire, and that fire... So not only did they have a fire, they also, in March 2021, OVH suffered a large fire at its data centers in Strasbourg, France. SBG2 had been built in 2016 with the capacity of 30,000 physical servers. SBG2 was declared a total loss, with early reports indicating damages to SBG1 and services across all four Strasbourg locations experiencing disruptions. The company chairman, Octave Klaba, took to Twitter to confirm that all its staff were safe. All customer data and backups were stored, and SBG2 were lost. SBG1 was damaged. Dang, that sucks, man. That absolutely just sucks. Yeah, I'm sure there's like a translate somewhere around here. Let's see. The word liable doesn't appear in here. I'm sure somewhere in here they would be able to explain why this actually happens. Wow. Dang. Well, a lot of things were, let's see, Han. A lot of things went wrong here. So let's just move back to this thing right here. All right, now a common question is whether CrowdStrike will be liable for damages. The answer is most certainly yes. Okay, so there's this OVH incident in France. While it applies to France, which is the jurisdiction I am most familiar with, the same principle applies to many other jurisdictions. Okay, one quick note to clear a common misconception before we begin. Most contracts have boilerplate terms to waive liability. There is a common misconception that they may waive liability. However, they do not. These terms have no meaning in most jurisdictions outside of the U.S., and either way, it's not possible to waive liability in most circumstances. Anything involving gross negligence, criminal activities, or going against the law itself. Yeah, I believe this is even true in U.S. law, which is that if you have gross negligence, you can't have, on one side of the party that the other party agreed to waive liability for, gross negligence no longer works in that favor. And so I guess gross negligence, completely bypassing any CI/CD to prod. Yes, this right here. So this would be where the argument's going to stem from. And I think this is what's going to cause a whole year of CrowdStrike issues, because they're going to have to deal with effectively, you got to remember that CrowdStrike operates globally, which means that in France, some sort of either civil level or even government level lawsuit's going to crop up. In England, in the U.S., in everywhere that they've been hit, Germany. Think about how many lawsuits they have to go through, and how much lawyer time and how much loss is going to be associated with that, and how many years that's going to go on. Even if they win all their lawsuits, it's going to be a lot. Like, let's just pretend that the average lawyer, like as far as I can tell. Oh, nice. Thank you for this little thing right here. Argentina wasn't affected. Even airport pirate Windows. Even airport pirate the Windows. Let's go. Let's go. England would be the UK. Yeah. Well, I just said England, but yes, the whole United Kingdom. You also got Ireland, all of them. So it's going to be interesting to see how much gross negligence are involved. Because like I actually heard someone just recently talking to me about their startup and how much it costs for a lawyer, and they pay approximately $1,200 an hour for the lawyer. Like when you get into these kind of this type of area, these companies charge an astronomical number per lawyer hours. So now let's just assume they're going to get sued in, say, 70 separate countries. How many hours do you think is going to be spent on lawyering? 70,000? I don't know. Like how much is it going to be? That would be what's it called? That's what, 84 million? Yeah, that'd be 84 million or 184 million. No, yeah, 84 million dollars spent. If they have to do 70,000 hours worth of lawyering across the world, assuming a rate of this, that's 84 million. That's like a wild amount. A wild amount. Quit CS for law. The hard part is most lawyers don't get paid that much. Right? Most people don't get paid that much at all. About OVH. OVH is a French data center and cloud provider, allegedly the largest hosting provider in Europe. They are most known for providing physical servers and virtual machines, as well as a variety of cloud services. Is this on-prem? On-prem, THH somehow mentioned. A fire broke out on the 10th of March, 2021 in their SGB location. It burned down 2 data centers, 1 and 2, with little or no recovery, and rendered 2 more data centers, 3 and 4, inoperable for a while. What is interesting is the aftermath. Multiple sites were destroyed, causing irrecoverable loss of service and loss of data to their customers. Multiple customers pursued them in court for damages, and they won. So there must have been. So I know we're gonna read this, but I assume they won because of one of these right here, where that the company either skirted the law or had gross negligence, right? I found there were a few interesting points raised and discussed by the court. Skipping the elements about the fire itself. There was a complete loss of service during and after the event. Really wild. I cannot believe a data center burnt down and there was loss of service. People, the reporting here is undeniable. There was complete irrecoverable loss of data after the event. Again, crazy. OVH provided a backup service for their machines and services. There was complete irrevocable loss of the backups after the event. There were multiple data centers in nearby locations, as is standard practice to provide some resiliency, 1 through 4. Multiple data centers burned down at once. Multiple data centers were in fact in the same place, a few steps apart. That was considered unexpected and not reasonable by the court. Really? Is that not considered reasonable? Offsite backups were not offsite. Okay, so what is the appropriate distance? Is offsite backups? So if 5 feet, not by me, it isn't. Is 5 feet not considered? So next door is not considered offsite. That is totally unreasonable. Okay, I mean, I have no idea. 15 meters plus? I require a minimum of 15 meters. 20 meters? Right? Like, what is considered a possible? I guess a good call out is like power isolation, right? Separate power lines, separate things. So that way, the backups were stored in the same data center or in other data centers that might happen to be in the same place. That was not considered reasonable by the court. Yeah, I guess I could understand that. One thing, can we just be real here for a second? Remember that time that Mark Zuckerberg had to explain how to log out to a congressperson? Remember, when people are found guilty of these type of things, remember who's arguing for or against what is reasonable and unreasonable. So a court of your peers, assuming that they're under the same level of requirements as America, I'm just saying, I don't know if I can really buy any a person's opinion in court to be good. But I will say that if you have a fire in one building and that fire can burn down your backup building, you're probably too close. I would say that should be the rule of thumb, that if there is one tornado, it can destroy both your places. Not that Europe even understands tornadoes. Does Europe even get tornadoes? U.S. Congress, famously good at science and logic, famously good. I don't think they do, right? EU does not get tornadoes. No, I don't even think you. Very rarely, yeah, not really. I don't think you actually have the proper geographic requirement for it to happen, right? You have to have the cold. You have to have the jet stream coming down that blows the cold in from Canada, and then you have to have the hot air from the water coming up, right? 80% of the tornadoes are in the U.S. Yeah, there's a special thing that's required for tornadoes. It's mostly Canadians, freaking Canadians, every single time. I swear, they ruin the earth. They cause tornadoes. All right, so I'd say that it is reasonable by the court to say this, that if you can have one building catch on fire and your backup building catches on fire from it, you're too close. I think everybody can agree to that, right? Because you can't have one disaster hit the primary place plus the backup. OVH tried to argue that customers should have followed good practices of having multiple backups in separate locations. The court acknowledges that was good practices. Oh, I guess that's kind of an interesting argument, that if they had, like if you had all of your website hosted in US East 1, is US East 1 one building? And if US East 1 burnt down, would Amazon be held liable? I assume US East 1 is actually spread out quite a bit, just due to the sheer size of it all. Right? They said they were in the same town on their site. Oh, they said they were in the same town? The world would collapse. Each availability zone is a different building. Oh, it's spreading availability zones. Okay. Depends on the selling point was redundancy. If I use AWS and they advertise spread across 3 zones and charge more for it. Oh, see, that's okay. Okay, so they're saying, oh, I see it. Okay, so they're saying availability zones is where you're being backed up to. But what you don't realize is availability zones are literally a house that's all next door to each other. You have like 4 buildings next door to each other, and these are zones. And so when one fire happened, they all burnt down. Okay, the court determined OVH was the backup provider. The court determined it was the role of OVH to provide backups to a reasonable standard and observe good practices. This includes storing a copy of the backup somewhere else is good practice. Now, I'm not going to say, my hard part I have is, again, the court made this decision, and I have no idea how observant they are of what is good and bad practices. Okay, they may even just, a court may have made you, remember, a court could have heard the word clean code and assume that if you don't do clean architecture, you're being negligent. So just remember that. But I happen to agree with them here, okay? I don't want people to be like, you said you should agree with the court. I'm not agreeing with the court, okay? I'm agreeing that this one single thing is truly a good rule, which is that you should have storing a copy somewhere that's not in the same building. The court ruled the OVH backup service was not operated to a reasonable standard and failed its purpose. Yes, one fire took out both. I'd say that's a good rule. That's a good ruling. Court, you did a good job. I find it interesting for techies. The court will judge your tech and what can really be considered best practices. Yeah, dude, it's like, yeah, this is really good. This is interesting. This is something you should worry about, is that if you can't explain why what you do in simple terms to a normie, then you're going to get your ass sued and someone's going to define what is quality. Okay? You better, if whatever your architecture is, you should come up with a really buzzword name for it. So that way, inevitably, when you're taken to court, you're going to be like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? We did the orthogonal resiliency architecture. Yeah, the orthogonal resiliency. Oh, you don't know what the term orthogonal means? It means obviously at 90 degrees. That means we had multiple different ways of resiliency. we all know that, okay? To summarize how things work, harm done plus intent to cause harm or negligent equals potential damages. There's significant harm caused to customers as an entire businesses were shut down, often indefinitely with complete data loss and no possibility to recover. Wow. That is wild. Yeah. OVM, they effed up. There were multiple occurrences of negligence, mistakes, or questionable practices in how OVH was operating the services. By the way, can we please just use commas properly? Every time this happens, I can't read this properly because I think there are multiple occurrences of negligence. And then this is one item, mistakes or questionable practices, right? But I think you're actually meaning 3 possible things here, which lead to the issue. It's a solid case. There are multiple customers who had opened a case against OVH and won. There may be more still processed. Wow. Think about how, again, the legal fees. The legal fees. Think about how much just in legal fees OVH is paying for, let alone in actual damages. That brings us to CrowdStrike. The similarities are striking. About CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike is an antivirus software that is installed on computers. It's sometimes called EDR, Endpoint Detection and Response. These days, it's mostly installed on corporate devices in large companies as they are required to have security solution. CrowdStrike runs on startup of the computer. It is deeply embedded into the operating system, Windows or Linux, at the kernel level, to run as soon as possible before other things start. It monitors what runs. It can block and report anything that seems suspicious. Okay, hey, that sounds good. All right, we can all agree that sounds good. We can all agree that you want something that runs nicely. Finally came from YouTube to here. Thanks, Jack. Well, you're welcome, right? Yeah, okay. This sounds nice. Yeah, please stop the suspicious programs. It's funny. I laugh in Linux all the time because whenever I start up, I've defined my startup really simple, and then it just runs that way. I don't have automatically updating dependencies as my services start. It's just like, hey, it's really easy. Not doing that. Okay, buddy. Okay there, buddy guy. All right, on the 19th, July 2024, CrowdStrike pushed an update to their software. The update was bugged and crashed any computer it was deployed on. I heard it wasn't every computer. I heard there was some sort of requirement on the computer. I've heard conflicting reports about this. Millions of computers were simultaneously received the updates across the world and were rendered non-functional. I think there are multiple interesting points to be raised and discussed. CrowdStrike runs at startup in a highly privileged mode, kernel driver on Windows. And it starts first. It can prevent any software and prevent the system itself from running, whether intentionally to block a threat or accidentally due to a bug or misjudging a non-threat. It really did prevent the system itself from running, It really kept you safe from your data. It is deployed to millions of corporate devices in industries like banks, travel, supermarkets, etc. It is largely targeted to critical industries and critical devices with confidential information. It is highly critical application operating in sensitive environments, which requires extra care to develop and test. I'll save this for a moment. Okay, one day of the incident, CrowdStrike pushed an update to millions of critical devices at once. Good practices require staged software upgrades. Yep. How was it possible for CrowdStrike to ship a broken update to millions of devices in the span of minutes? Was there no testing, no staged rollout? From discussions online, customers in hospitals have complained about the issue before and requested for CrowdStrike to allow some control on updates. One customer reports they were rejected with a 50-page memo from CrowdStrike saying they refused to stage anything. No way. There ain't no way this is true. Dude, if that is true, that cannot be true. I want that 50-page report. Give me a 50-page report on why you refuse to stage something, because I want to see more than 5 words in which makes sense. Because I doubt, dude, it has to be one sentence being like, this is the reason for CrowdStrike not doing it, and then lorem ipsum for 50 pages, because there is no possible way that CrowdStrike could possibly say that. That is a death sentence. That is actually a death sentence. Does CrowdStrike not have the ability to stage a rollout? They have repeatedly alluded that they did not and or refuse to. That may be in breach of regulation in regulated industry they sell to. I just simply believe that is too much sensationalism. I just can't believe that that's real. I just can't. I know humans are inept, and I am inept as well. I do not consider myself special, but this just seems like an obvious thing you do when you have $1 billion of revenue and you roll out to at boot level. It just seems like there's no way they wouldn't. CrowdStrike is expected to be heavily tested to not disrupt the critical device it is deployed to. The update crashed any computer it was deployed on. BSOD. How was it possible for an ostensibly broken update to not be detected before it was pushed to the outside world? Again, I think I swear I remember reading something about alternative. There was some extra thing that had to be on the computer or something else that caused the whole thing to break down. And perhaps, just to be completely fair and not dogging on them completely, perhaps they didn't have the same setup, and so it was all gravy for their system. I'm just saying it could be, but I just somehow doubt. I still doubt at the same time. I'm trying to, best case is that they didn't have the same setup. Worst case, they just pushed to production. Somewhere in there happened. Does CrowdStrike do any testing whatsoever? One would assume they do some level of testing. It would be ignorant to think they don't, right? Obviously, they didn't, or not ignorant, sorry. It'd be malicious to think they don't. Ignorant means you simply don't know, but there's no way that CrowdStrike doesn't do any testing. Can we all at least agree to that? They have to do some level of testing. It would be too silly not to think they don't. On the computer they used, tested on the Mac, real men test and prod. Yep. They are still a massive company. They aren't circus clowns. I would assume they have some level of testing. All right, smoke testing. Yeah, well, I don't know what they're smoking, to be fair. Okay, hey, let's just, I think these type of statements are just incredulous to begin with. It is not an isolated incident. The same thing happened a few weeks earlier with CrowdStrike agent on Linux, nuking the system, and there may be occurrences before. Yeah, this ain't looking good. When they get inevitably brought to court, the fact that they did it like a couple months before on Linux, this ain't looking good for them, right? Like, this is going to be such a hard sell afterwards that they didn't just do this by sheer dumbness, right? They have goofed that one up bad. After the bad update was pushed, it took nearly 2 hours for CrowdStrike to realize there was a problem and stop the update. Really? 2 hours? They didn't just check Twitter? Like, dude, you understood that there was a problem in about 15 minutes on Twitter. There ain't no way. That's some AT&T shit. They don't have telemetry. No, their telemetry just simply... their telemetry is when they first boot, it says, hey, we booted. That's their telemetry. So just all of them were reporting they booted. Hey, we got it. Don't worry. We've booted. It was a Friday. What can you expect? When the earthquake hits, people flood the internet with posts about it, some within 20 or 30 seconds. Damaging seismic waves traveling at 3 to 5 meters per second. Is that what I can't tell what that, there must be something else in there. Fiber signals move at 200,000 kilometers per second. Oh, that's 3 to 5 kilometers per second. All right, that means when the seismic waves are about 100 kilometers out, they begin to be overtaken by the waves posts about them. Oh, that's pretty funny. The tweet waves are actually beating it. People outside the radius may get a word of the quake via Twitter, IRC, or SMS before the shaking hits. Whoa, earthquake. Sadly, a Twitterer's first instinct is not to find shelter. Oh my gosh. Earthquake coming. I better tweet about it. Live video. Here we go, people. Oh my gosh, that is just too bad. That is just simply too bad. All right. Developers working on critical software are required to monitor deployments after deploying to verify it's working as expected and not causing issues. Yeah, I would assume that this has to be a requirement of something like CrowdStrike. Like, I remember every single time I released any project, the time that I had to overwrite the network driver for the television at Netflix was by far the worst one, and I was already at Netflix for 8 years at that point. I have done so many deployments to production. I still sweat. Like, I would be sweating every single time because I know that when I let it go out there, like, millions of people are going to execute that code. And if I got one thing wrong, it's not going to be great. I hated oops-a-daising and having to have production rolled back. And so, like, the amount I would just, like, stare at Atlas at every real-time metric, I'd be like, right? Like, it was terrifying. I can't imagine releasing to the boot level and not just like sweating. What is Atlas? Atlas is a real-time metric system. Atlas, Netflix, there you go. Atlas engineering. Yeah, there you go. Telemetry platform. It's pretty cool. If you've never checked it out, it's actually super, super cool. It just works so fast. It's beautiful. It has this whole like cardinality thing with different types of metrics. So you can slice up a bunch of data, but depending on how many different numbers in those data, that's the cardinality of the set. So it takes up an exponential amount of memory. So you have to kind of keep your cardinality low. But if you set it up just right, like you can have like obviously region, type. You can put in enough of these metrics that it makes sense. It doesn't explode. And then all of a sudden it just is beautiful. And you can just do these instant searches, slice the data a certain way. Oh, it was really great. It was really, really great. We've had it since 2014. I've been using it forever. It was a lot of fun. What was CrowdStrike doing after deployment? Were they monitoring the deployment? Could they not notice that the update destroyed every machine it was deployed to? Empty bullet point. Couldn't you observe your own blog post and realize you have an empty bullet point? All computers were rendered inoperable by CrowdStrike, unable to boot. For affected companies that left all their employees with a dead computer, unable to do anything, it wasn't possible for users to access the computer to raise a ticket or troubleshoot it. It was a complete loss of service with no way to recover. Well, there was a way to recover technically. You had to go and get the thing off there. You had to go get CrowdStrike off there. Everything I saw was like renamed the sys32 folder to like CrowdStrike 2. One way to fix the computer was for the IT team to be given the computer and completely reinstall, re-image it. I heard it wasn't that bad. I heard it was not that bad. It was just simply removing the CrowdStrike stuff, right? At the end of the article, the link to the employees about the 50-page refusal. Sadly, the actual 50 pages isn't available. Yeah, the list is very hyperbolic. Yeah, I feel like this is a very unfair way to put it. But it still was. You had to have someone with access to the computer, step by step, take it over and do something with it. So it was bad for sure, but it wasn't this bad. Another way that was found later in the day was that the administrators to access the computer physically and try to boot in safe mode and recovery mode, then delete the driver for the CrowdStrike. Okay, I should have just read one more line. This remediation can only be done with physical access to the affected computer and by an administrator who has the special password or USB key with the password to start the laptop in recovery mode. It will take weeks for affected companies to physically get a hand on every device, user laptop, desktop, and server. It can be thousands to hundreds of thousands of devices to get to. Well, technically, it's 8.4 million is what they're saying. So if you had 4 million, right, divided by, let's just say that there was 1,000 people working on it. Let's say we had 1,000 people working on it, and let's say that thing, each one of those takes 20 minutes. It takes 20, or yeah, we'll just say it takes 20 minutes to recover, and then divide that by 60 for hours. You could possibly have that many. Let's divide that by 24 for how many days that is. You could take that long, so that's what? Almost, we're getting near the 4-year mark, 3.5, 3.2. Wow, it's way off. Okay, way off, not a big deal. 3.2 years. 3.2 years if it took 20 minutes per one. Crazy to think about. It will take longer for devices that are enclosed or difficult to access, like screen terminals in the airport, medical devices and machinery in hospitals, or elevator panels. It may be elevator panels running Windows is insane, by the way. Why the hell are you not just an RTOS? How are you not? Well, you got to remember, you have to restart the device. You have to make sure you have the privileged access or whatever. You have to then boot into safe mode. Then you have to go and find the driver. Then you have to delete that driver, and then you have to be done. Then you have to go to the next computer, right? Like there's a lot of time in that. Okay, this is not some small thing. Yeah, dude, why are you not doing an RTOS? It may, like, especially for an elevator. That's crazy that someone's not using an RTOS for that. It may be impossible to restore the device if the device is locked down somehow, physically blocked, or recovery password unknown. Employees who require a computer to work are unable to work at all during the time. It is not possible to provide a spare computer to affected users. The spares were affected by the issue too. Got them. Backups were not backed up. CrowdStrike is a security software that was meant to keep computers running and protected from threats. CrowdStrike destroyed the computers it was supposed to protect. It failed at its purpose. There's significant harm caused to customers. Businesses were partially or completely shut down for days or weeks. There are multiple occurrences of negligence, mistakes, and questionable practices in how CrowdStrike was operating the service, which led to the issue. The issue was not isolated incident, as people have reported the same thing happening just a few weeks before on lesser scale, and also multiple times over the years. I would actually be surprised if CrowdStrike, at least in America, I'd be shocked if their EULAs or TOSs or whatever it is that and all their contractual stuff does not get destroyed for gross negligence. I would actually be completely shocked if that doesn't happen. That should leave CrowdStrike liable wide open to countless claims for damages. Customers operating in regulated industries like healthcare, finance, aerospace, transportation are actually required to test and stage and track changes. CrowdStrike claimed to have dozens certifications and standards which require them to follow particular development practices and carry out various level of testing, but they clearly did not. I really hope they actually post a real postmortem of like what exactly happened that led to it. Because it has to be something so ridiculous. It has to be something so stupid that it's to the point of somebody being like, they were working on their own dev thing and they somehow have been at CrowdStrike long enough to have like elevated privileges and accidentally released to prod. Like it has to be something that, like it honestly has to be something that dumb, because I can't imagine it was something as stupid as they actually thought it was great. More expensive mistake than inventing null. No, null's $1 trillion mistake. CrowdStrike protected our computers for years, and with one mistake, everybody hates them. Sad, that is how life is. Yes, that is life. I mean, that's the thing, is that it takes years to establish great trust. It takes hours to destroy great trust. Oh, no, we saw this. This one, it just wasn't good, right? It didn't have enough girth to this one. They have an executive summary PDF. I know, but there's no girth to that. Git push, production, force, oopsie daisy. Yeah, build a bridge after many great bridges, and it falls down. Haters hate. Exactly. It will always be this way, though. Like, is there any way that this won't happen? Right? Like, can you imagine a world in which somebody could just oopsie daisy a bridge, and then you'd be like, give that man another shot, right? Like, nobody's gonna just give that guy another shot after collapsing a bridge. That just does not exist, right? And it's not that I don't have sympathy for the person that goofs up. Stock recovers in a week. I don't think stock will recover in a week. Another shot of tequila, yeah. Perfect marriage until cheating happened. Then everything is destroyed. Simple, yeah. You can't just like cheat once and be like, it's only once. I know, exactly. That's the problem. It's just that, right? All right. That should leave CrowdStrike liable for wide open. Wow, that's a weird phrase. That should leave CrowdStrike liable wide open to countless claims for damages. I don't think that sentence works. At least in my head, it doesn't. Customers operating in regulated industries like healthcare, finance, aerospace. I feel like I've read this. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, appendix. There you go. So here's all the appendix of all the different things. Great. There's somebody apparently on vacation with Verbo. There's this fun stuff. Employees working for a non-identified company claimed the company was hit by a previous CrowdStrike issue. They formally requested for CrowdStrike to allow. Okay, so here's this, but it doesn't actually give you this information. All right, whatever. You see the idea. I'm shocked that CrowdStrike, honestly, CrowdStrike only has a stock of this bad right now. I'm surprised it's not something bigger. I'm actually surprised that their stock is still holding up because I feel like this little net income is going to receive several negative units over the next couple of quarters when just the inevitable amount of lawsuits that are going to come flying in, the amount of swirl that's going to be surrounding their company. Oh, man. And I'm curious if their future growth is going to be negative due to so many people having negative opinions. But my guess is that it might not happen, though. And the reason why I say that is that the problem with our industry is that it's not the engineers that are taking care and making these decisions. It's a VP of engineering. That, like everybody else, is highly subject to nepotism. It just is. VP really likes their sales buddy. Sales buddy tells them to use CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike is now used. Devs go, I don't want to use this. They're crap. Doesn't matter if they're great or not great. Right? Already sold my calls, made a good sum of cash. Nice job, Defiasol. Good job. Well done, Defiasol. Golf course decision making. Yeah, it's golf course decision making. That's how I imagine most software sales like this go anyways. So sad reality is that they're probably not going to pay much for what they have done. Yet here we are. Hi, are dick jokes loud? Yes, they are. The name is the Primogen.